My name is Anna Torres. I go by Anita, and I'm a student desiring to become a youth pastor. I started going to a church with my mom. I think the relationships with them, the critiques, the judgment came from those people, and they were very loud, of like me wearing pants, and they chose to do skirts and things like that I was like not comfortable with, but then I did it because I felt obligated to, not because of personal desire. Even though like when I first got to their church, I was like, okay, like I'm curious about who God is and what you're teaching. But then that slowly faded because of the way that they were treating me, and just like, it didn't feel honest and genuine. When I started going to Shalom, I was also very withdrawn of like, you're gonna hurt me later on, so I'm gonna be as detached as possible. And so I started going, and they were so nice to me, and I was like, okay, like this is gonna fade. And then they kept being nice to me. And I think that even started my pursuit of wanting to know about God, because I was like, why are you guys so nice? Like, can you stop? Or like, what is this about? And then they were like, well, we love Jesus, and that's why we love people. And I was like, okay, like that makes sense, I think.
Right when I moved into the neighborhood, someone connected me to Anna. She was already a part of the ministry. I was just joining the ministry. I didn't really know what I was doing or where God was calling me. And so someone recognized her desire to go to college and her desire to have a mentor. And so then they connected me and asked me if I'd be willing to start meeting with her. And little did I know that that relationship would become like a 7 or 8 year and probably a lifetime relationship for us. Yeah, when I first met Anna, I immediately saw a leader. And she had so much passion for life, passion for God, love of the people around her, but she didn't see or understand as much those leadership qualities that she had in herself. She didn't understand the power of her story.
Like I mentioned, I didn't have a lot of people who like pushed me to do things or who told me that I could be something. I think in my life, I grew up in a very gang neighborhood who like teenagers got pregnant, you know, from gang members, or just would end up at dead-end jobs. And so my family told me that like very early on, like, this is what you're gonna do with your life. You're gonna do nothing or you're gonna get pregnant. And so I just knew that like, that's what I was destined to. I think until I was surrounded by Annika, who I think was like a resource for me, was like, of her even just wording things differently, of like, have you tried it out? Like, what would it look like for you to do college? Have you thought of a different career? Like, instead of just thinking like, my life is just like this and it's gonna stay this way, I think she opened up like just such a different path of like, what ifs, what could be, and wonder. I think even through different things, she killed a lot of stigmas that I thought were true, of like therapy. I think for me, therapy was a big one, that I was like, in my family, we're told like crazy people or like people who like are just left in the street do therapy because it's like the last resort and like you don't need it. And so I think talking to Annika and her being like, this is what therapy can look like, just a conversation with someone who like gives you a space to listen to. I was like, okay, whatever. And so I think, again, like that's kind of a lot what happened during our mentorship times.
For the first few years, it was just a lot of listening, asking her questions, processing her story and her past, and then slowly starting inviting her into more healing. So things like inner healing prayer, things like exploring her spiritual gifts and how that can bless her life and also bless her community. Things like starting counseling or spiritual direction. And she started slowly like building this excitement around inner healing. It like became an advocate for healing as she experienced it in her own life. And then she now is like so vocal about her own healing journey, and kind of energizes her city and her community to want that for themselves. And so she kind of like broke through whatever, you know, barriers were there for her to really flourish as a leader, as the first like Latina local leader in our community through our church. And then by breaking through that, she also invited this whole new wave of leaders right after her. And so she was kind of the first brave soul that decided to say yes to that invitation.
I think I just think of myself as a little girl from the neighborhood that like wasn't gonna do more with her life, and like I don't have purpose. And I think to hear just like how long I've came and like the ways that I've impacted other people in the journey, I think is really like crazy to me, because I didn't really none of that has happened over these past 8 years I thought could happen. And I think that's been like really crazy to see, the ways that I've like impacted other people to lead, the ways that I've led, and just like people have came to like know Jesus because of me, the ways that like I've had really hard conversations with youth who like aren't open to talking to other people, but they'll talk to me because they feel safe. Now realizing like the impact I do have, and to bring it back and to want to care, is why I go to the youth center and I try to talk to these like gang impacted youth who like also have tunnel vision over their life. And I think that's such an interesting ripple effect that has happened now, that like my life has been affected and now I want to affect other people's lives, you know, for the better. So I think that's pretty great to think about. I don't know.